The phone was still pinging. Not in one spot, but drifting steadily through rural roads, crossing county lines as if someone were driving it somewhere specific. Except the girl it belonged to had already been dead for hours. That impossible signal was the first fracture in what looked like a simple missing person case. A 16-year-old walking home on a warm summer night who never arrived. A route she knew by heart. A family waiting with dinner on the table. And then this ghost in the network, her device refusing to stay still long after her life had ended. The persistent movement of the phone created an eerie digital footprint that defied logic, sending investigators on a chase that would ultimately unravel a nightmare hidden beneath the surface of everyday suburban life. It was as if the technology itself was trying to speak for the victim, continuing to broadcast her last known movements even as the terrible truth had already taken hold. Susana Morales left her friend's apartment complex in Norcross, Georgia, around 10 p.m. on July 26, 2022. The walk home should have taken 15 minutes. She was last captured on surveillance heading in the right direction. Her Life 360 app, shared with loved ones, showed her moving normally at first. Then the data shifted. The speed jumped. 40 miles per hour. The wrong direction. A vehicle. A sudden, violent crash alert followed shortly after. The phone kept transmitting for a bit longer before going silent. A small but chilling detail investigators later noted, the crash alert didn't just mark impact, it marked a transition point where human presence stopped and digital movement continued without explanation. These small but critical details painted a picture of a routine evening that turned into unimaginable horror within moments. Susana was doing what countless teenagers do, heading home after spending time with friends, relying on familiar streets and the comfort of technology to stay connected. The Life 360 app, intended as a safety net for families, instead became a silent witness to the abrupt change in her trajectory. 1 minute she was on foot, the next propelled at high speed in an unfamiliar direction. The crash alert added another layer of urgency and dread, suggesting impact or distress that no one could respond to in time. For the family monitoring from home, those shifting pings transformed a quiet evening into a cascade of panic, with each update bringing more questions than answers. To the family, it was immediate terror. To investigators, it was the beginning of a hunt that would expose layers of deception, a badge that should have meant protection, and a killer who left digital breadcrumbs he couldn't erase. The contrast between the family's emotional turmoil and the methodical work of law enforcement highlighted the different ways this case was experienced. While loved ones grappled with fear and desperate hope, detectives began piecing together fragments from the digital world that refused to stay quiet. This discrepancy between what the family felt in their hearts and what the data revealed would drive the investigation forward, revealing uncomfortable truths about trust, authority, and the vulnerabilities that exist even in seemingly safe communities. The initial search was frantic but methodical. Canvassing, dogs, helicopters. Nothing. No witnesses to an abduction. No immediate signs of struggle along her route. The phone's last ping suggested it had been discarded or powered down near a specific area, but the body wasn't there. The mystery deepened as days turned into weeks. Rumors swirled: runaway, accident, random predator. But the phone data told a different story. Someone had taken her, and someone had her device, or at least interacted with its last signals. Search efforts mobilized quickly, involving multiple agencies and volunteers who combed through neighborhoods, wooded areas, and roadsides. Helicopters scanned from above while ground teams followed every lead, no matter how small. Yet the absence of physical evidence at first only heightened the frustration and confusion. The phone's final resting signals became a focal point, drawing resources to locations that seemed promising but yielded no immediate results. As time passed, the community began to speculate wildly, filling the information vacuum with theories that ranged from the plausible to the far-fetched. Through it all, the digital trail remained the most reliable thread, suggesting movement and intent that pointed toward foul play rather than a simple disappearance. One overlooked early anomaly would later become critical. The phone's movement pattern didn't resemble a person walking, running, or even being carried casually. It resembled transport. Controlled. Continuous. Intentional. What few knew at the time was how the investigation quietly pivoted to cell tower records and the movements of people near the disappearance. One name kept surfacing in the digital shadows, a young police officer named Miles Bryant. His work phone and personal phone placed him in the vicinity of key locations on the night she vanished and the following morning. Locations that aligned eerily with where her remains would eventually be discovered. That shift changed everything. It was no longer a missing person case. It was a reconstruction of movement, time, and silence. Middle of this case is where the ground shifts under you. Bryant was no stranger in uniform. He was a Doraville police officer. The kind of person the community might turn to in an emergency. Yet evidence painted a picture of someone who allegedly used that authority, or the illusion of it, to approach a vulnerable teenager. Theories about what happened in those critical minutes after she entered the vehicle, willingly or not, ranged from a botched encounter to something far more calculated. Witness inconsistencies emerged. Timelines didn't line up. Small lies about his whereabouts began to unravel under scrutiny of phone data, work logs, and physical evidence. A subtle but important investigative detail later surfaced. Bryant's communications showed brief gaps during the exact window when Susana's phone transitioned from normal movement to high-speed transport. Those gaps became anchors in the timeline reconstruction. Hidden in the noise were overlooked details: a discarded firearm found near the body's eventual discovery site, linked ballistically. Phone records showing Bryant's devices near that same remote spot the night of the disappearance and into the next day. The phone's movement across multiple counties suggested transport, perhaps an attempt to distance the crime or dispose of evidence. The 3 days element in the hook reflects how the digital trail lingered, with signals and data continuing to paint a map long after silence fell, crossing jurisdictional lines that complicated the early response. Investigators also noted something more unsettling in hindsight. The phone did not simply stop at a single point. It stalled, moved again briefly, then disappeared from active tracking in a way consistent with deliberate shutdown or shielding. These specifics added crucial layers to the case, transforming vague suspicions into concrete connections. The firearm, discovered in proximity to where Susana's remains were ultimately located, provided a tangible link when ballistics testing tied it back to the investigation. Meanwhile, the persistent tracking of Bryant's devices over multiple days reinforced his connection to the scene, showing activity that extended well beyond the initial incident. The phone's journey across county lines implied deliberate efforts to obscure the crime, perhaps by moving evidence or the victim herself. This cross-jurisdictional movement created logistical challenges for investigators early on, as different agencies had to coordinate across boundaries while piecing together a fragmented digital puzzle that refused to disappear. One detail that struck analysts later was the consistency of Bryant's device pings near infrastructure points, cell towers, road intersections, and rural pull-offs that matched disposal routes rather than random travel. Psychologically, the case reveals the danger of misplaced trust. A girl doing everything right, walking a familiar path, staying connected via apps, still vanished. The perpetrator's behavior showed elements of opportunity mixed with calculation, using a position of perceived safety, then the frantic efforts to cover tracks that technology made nearly impossible. Contradictions piled up. Alibis crumbled against geolocation. The investigation exposed how modern policing tools, cameras, apps, tower pings, can ensnare even those who wear the badge. And that contradiction is what makes this case linger. Because the system didn't fail in silence. It recorded everything. As the case built, the human cost became clearer. A family shattered, a community questioning safety in their own neighborhoods, and the slow realization that the person sworn to serve and protect may have betrayed that oath in the worst way. Lesser-known facts included the precise crash alert timing, the exact alignment of Bryant's dual phones with the body site, and the gun left behind. Details that turned circumstantial digital evidence into a conviction. In the end, the hidden truth came into focus through relentless cross-referencing. Susana had been abducted, assaulted, and killed within hours. Her body was dumped in a location that matched the phone pings and the officer's movements. The phone's lingering data trail, combined with the physical evidence, sealed the reconstruction. Bryant was arrested, fired, and eventually convicted of her murder. The final reconstruction wasn't dramatic in motion, it was precise. A timeline built from signals, logs, and silence. And what lingered wasn't just the crime itself, but the uncomfortable reality that every piece of it had already been recorded somewhere, waiting to be understood. If you want to uncover more dark truths and hidden histories, subscribe to FrameTale HQ, hit the notification bell, and leave your thoughts on this story in the comments below. Until next time, keep searching for the truth.